Our very first storyteller is Eleanor Clement Glass, and she is all the way here from Oakland.
Thank you, Nancy. Welcome, everyone. Growing up, I was an Army brat, the daughter of Lieutenant Colonel William J. Clement, Jr. He was a black Army officer. And you know, in 1945, the United States Army was segregated with black and white troops that were separate, and also the black troops had white officers that supervised them. So when my father, as a young man, was accepted into officer training and then completed it and sent to the Philippines, it was a really big deal. But you know what was even a bigger deal for my father? It was meeting Gloria Baldecaño Santiago, my Filipino mother. She was 16 and he fell in love. They fell in love, they got married, and my mother braved leaving her homeland and her family to travel the world with my father. They had 2 boys and 2 girls. I'm the eldest. And we moved around a lot. We moved every 2 or 3 years to some place in the United States or abroad. I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Stuttgart, Germany, Fort Benning, North Carolina, Mount Holly, New Jersey, and Chicago, Illinois, before I was 12 years old. But I liked moving. My mother called it our grand new adventure, and I was able to meet new people, learn about new places, find money in the couch when we were moving. And we just enjoyed that so much, except for one thing. My biggest challenge and my greatest anxiety was always being the new kid, the kid who had to make friends, the kid who had to figure out how to fit in. Well, when we were getting ready to leave Chicago, Illinois, we went to my very favorite posting, which was Bangkok, Thailand. I went to ISB, International School Bangkok, and the kids there were from all over the world. My best friend was Yuniko from Japan, Sung-ha from Korea, and Penny, who was a white girl from Alabama. Most of the kids were either the kids of international diplomats or businessmen or military families like mine. We had a lot of really unique experiences at ISB, but the one I will never forget was the field trip, the 8th grade field trip where they loaded us all on buses, 8th grade, and the buses took us on dirt roads through the lush tropical forest in Bangkok, Thailand, to the snake farm. Now, the snake farm had a number of big cement pits, and the cement came up to your chest. And there were signs, it said, dangerous snakes, keep your hands and arms inside the barrier, outside the barrier. Yeah, no problem. Well, Sung-ha and Yuniko and Penny and I ran over to the big pit that said, king cobras, poisonous snakes. We elbowed our way in so we could be right at the front. And right at the front where the cement barriers were, we could look over and we saw a mass of poisonous snakes. There were hundreds of them, and they were in the dirt, and they were writhing over each other. And then 2 of them started coming toward us as quickly as they could. We stepped back even though there was a barrier. I was wondering, can snakes jump? Well, the snakes were like 6 feet long. Those were the junior ones. The 2 that came toward us, the black and white one was 10 feet long. And it lifted its body by 3 feet very close to me. I could see the scales pulsing and rippling. And then he flattened his neck and made a hood and turned his eye that was on the side to stare at me, making eye contact with naked hostility. The second one hissed and puffed. It was a brown one, and it came up and opened its mouth wide, and I could see the fangs that were half-inch long. I thought, are they as frightened and threatened as I am? I kept staring at them. And then we heard big, big bangs on buckets. And snake handlers came in through all the doors. They were wearing completely black rubber outfits with thigh-high rubber boots and gloves. Each one of them had a big spear, wooden spear with a prong at the end. They would take the spear and catch the snake right under their neck. And when they opened their mouths, they took another stick and punctured meat in a big bucket and stuffed it into the snake and then pulled it partway down to digest later. Oh, it was the first time I had ever seen a pit of dangerous snakes. But it wouldn't be the last time. When it was time to leave ISB and Bangkok, Thailand, my father had gotten orders to go to Leavenworth, Kansas. We had never lived in the middle of America. We'd never lived in the heartland of the country, and we were getting excited about that. My father, as he usually did, called the four of us together, and he always said, okay, we're moving to a new place. What do I want you to do? We said, be yourself. He said, yes, remember who you are, and remember who you come from. And remember, I will always protect you, especially my girls. Well, we went on the grand new adventure. We got to Leavenworth, Kansas, and we found out there was no high school on the Army base for me, 14 years old, getting ready to start high school. So I went to the high school in town. The first day, my mother signed me up for classes, and as I walked down the hall that was bordered by those gray metal lockers, I could see a sea of black and white faces. So different from ISB. As I looked around, I almost bumped into 4 big white boys. They were jocks. They had athletic jackets and a buzz cut, and they were blocking my way. One of them looked me up and down. What are you? Vietnamese? Well, I smiled nervously, and just when I was getting ready to say, no, I'm black and Filipino, they brushed brusquely by me, knocking my book bag off my shoulder. Well, that night, I told my dad about my first day at school. Those stupid bullies. Why did they push me? And what? They think I'm Vietnamese? Do I look Vietnamese? My father said, honey, it's 1964. They probably have never seen Asians off the television except for the Vietnam War. And they probably don't have any concept of black people who are not like the versions of black people they see right here in their town. If you feel unsafe, you call me. Well, September and October, I had lunch by myself every day. I sat by myself. I tried to make friends. I looked up at people, I smiled, but they either looked right through me or they looked away. I was starting to get worried and felt kind of lonely because I'd never had this much trouble connecting with someone in a new place. Then, in November, Susie and Ann, who were in my homeroom class and 2 other classes, they invited me to have lunch with them. Finally, I made some friends in this new foreign place. We had lunch, and I was feeling like maybe I was starting to fit in, with the exception of the fact that I was aware there was a lot of segregation in that school, and the black kids kind of stayed with the black kids, and the white kids stayed with the white kids, and I had been befriended by 2 white girls, so they were my group. I didn't know what that meant at the time. Well, Susie was a tall, white girl with pixie blonde curls and penetrating blue eyes. Anne was a little shorter than me, stocky, long brown hair and big, thick brown bangs. We were excited because come December, we were going to our first high school dance. I was so excited. My mother bought me a new red dress, and she took me to the school. I was looking for Susie and Anne, and they were sitting in the middle of the wooden bleachers. So I went up and sat with them. And we looked over, and we saw at the front the band was playing, and there was a smattering of white couples dancing. But way in the back of the gym, there was a big circle of black girls and boys, and they were clapping, and they were dancing, and they were just having a wonderful time. Oh, I thought, oh, I'd love to dance with somebody, but I didn't know any boys at the school. And then 2 boys broke away from the circle and came up the bleachers, and they were coming toward me. The tall one gave the short one in front a little nudge, and he said, "Hey, you want to dance?" I was so excited. I said, "Yes, I would love to." And then I started to stand up, and their faces changed. They said, "Oh." She said, "Yes, I know, I heard her." And then they backed away, looking at me very curiously. A wave of embarrassment and maybe shame washed over me. I didn't know what was happening. I saw them go down the bleachers and back over to the circle. And then they were swarmed by a bunch of black kids, black boys, who they started talking animatedly, and they pointed up at me, and the faces turned to look at me. And then a miracle happened. Another black boy left the circle, came up the benches, and he came over and said, "Would you like to dance?" I was more cautious this time. "Sure, okay." And he took my hand and walked me down the bleachers so I wouldn't trip. We went over to the circle and we danced. And then another black boy asked me to dance. And then another. I was giddy with excitement. I was so happy. I was dancing. And then at intermission, I looked around for my friends. Susie and Ann, they weren't up in the bleachers. Oh, there. They were already on the floor, and they were coming straight at me, unsmiling. Susie grabbed my arm. "Come with me right now." She squeezed my arm tight. Ann flanked my other side. So Susie pulled me, and Ann pushed me into the far bathroom, not the one where most people were, but the empty one. As soon as we got in the bathroom, Susie whirled on me, and she growled at my face. She said, "What are you doing? Why are you dancing with those niggers?" I was shocked. I was furious. I leaned to her and I said, "Because I am a nigger." Well, her head whipped back as if I had punched her in the face. Her eyes widened and her mouth opened. Was that fear? And just as quickly, her face turned to white, hot anger. Blotchy red crawled up her face and underneath her pixie blonde curls. I saw her eyes narrow, and she bored into me with naked hostility. Her nose flared, her lips curled. And then she started screaming venomously at me. She was so close I could feel the spittle spray on my face. "No, you are not. No, you are not." And then she looked at Ann for confirmation. "This can't be. She can't be," said Ann. They started coming close to me, and I took some steps back. They were pushing me into a corner. I didn't know what they were going to do. I was so afraid, but I was angry too. I knew I had to do something, so I pushed them as hard as I could, right through them, and I opened the door to the bathroom, and I ran down the hall to the payphone way at the end. When I got to the payphone, I looked back, and they were not following me. Oh, I leaned against the wall, and I took some big, heaping breaths. I called my father. Yes. Okay. Uh-huh. I can do that. Yes, I will. And then I took a deep breath and walked back to the gym, and I joined that circle again and danced every single dance. One time I looked over and I caught a glimpse of my father's face. He was out in the hall looking through the little window in the gym door. He was watching me. He had come to pick me up. And when I got out at the end of the dance, I realized he was in his Army uniform. And he offered me his arm as we walked to the parking lot. I was never so relieved that this was the last day I had at that school. My father's assignment had been to Command and General Staff College to learn about military strategy, and that was up. He had been now assigned to the Presidio of San Francisco. So we all piled in the family Chevy, and we drove across country to the San Francisco Bay Area. In the car ride, I just kept thinking, how could this have happened? How could my friends have turned on me so quickly? They must have had hate shoved down their throats all their lives. Well, when we got to San Francisco, I was so excited to be winding down the streets of Chinatown. And then we saw the beautiful rolling hills of Marin County, and there's the Golden Gate Bridge. And I knew I was not in Kansas anymore. Thank you.